I started to realize that everyone shared the same sort of hang-ups around money. They were all stuck somewhere in the same place. And that actually didn't have anything to do with numbers. And that was kind of my first aha. But when I started to really have this transformation or unraveling my own relationship with money, I could not look at ATM receipts. I would fold them in origami shape, shove them in my wallet, and then I just would never look at them. And there was a moment when I thought, okay, this is ridiculous. But what I recognize is that growing your wealth and money, and it's not just about math. It's not just about the numbers. If it was, we would all have this thing figured out. Money is so emotional, and that these areas of a trauma, and that might feel like a big word for a lot of people, but really just think of it as some sort of emotional pain or distress or something that you feel internally in your body when you interact with money. Like whether it's when you're opening your bank app and you start to get your heart starts racing, or maybe you forgot to pay a bill one time and your credit score dropped, and every time you go to pay a bill, you just have this feeling of, oh my gosh, this is going to happen to me again. I'm a terrible, horrible person.
Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They are not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them. But the only thing you can't do is ignore them, because they change things. They push the human race forward. And while some might see them as crazy ones, we see genius, because the people who think they are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do.
Welcome to Catching Up to Fi, a podcast on mindset, money, and life for late starters of any age on their journey to financial independence. I'm Bill, and I'm a late starter.
I'm Jackie, and I'm also a late starter, and we're your host. We're here to help you on your journey to financial independence, no matter where you're starting.
We're going to talk to experts, other late starters, and explore topics related to our mission.
Join us as we catch up to Fi together.
Hello, and welcome back to a chilly Catching Up to Fi. It's 11 degrees out there in Tennessee. I don't know what it is in Dayton or in Asheville. Maybe what is the weather report out there, Jackie?
Well, Dayton, it is single digits. It sounds like shoe sizes and not temperatures. So last night we were at -1, and right now we're about at, I think, 6 degrees. So not looking so great. And we are talking in January, although here in Ohio, we get these cold temperatures probably through the end of March. And I kind of wish I was in Tennessee with you, Bill.
Well, I don't know. It's not that much better. Our little koi pond is frozen, and hopefully the fish survive.
Aww.
And then Shannah Game, our guest today, she's out in Nashville, North Carolina, and she survived the hurricane catastrophe. How are you doing with the cold now?
You know, I'm one of those strange people that actually really loves the cold. Like, give me a day I can put on a jacket and a hat and some gloves and some shoes to big old boots, and I am so happy. So I'm actually weirdly enjoying 11-degree weather.
Oh, that's interesting, because you had a long stint in LA where you grew up, and we'll probably get into some of that, but that's a reverse cold migration, because everybody else is moving to Tennessee from the Midwest and from New England. Jackie keeps talking about moving to South Carolina or somewhere, but she hasn't done it yet. And then you did the reverse weather arbitrage, I guess, and love it. So that is very interesting. I love Asheville. It's a great town, and we really pray for their complete recovery. I know you're undergoing that still. I'm glad your house itself did not suffer significant damage, but as you said to us earlier, your neighbors had a tree split their house. Don't forget about our Ashevilleans, Western North Carolinians, Eastern Tennesseans, and the fact that they're still recovering. We get out of the news and media cycle, but that doesn't mean the trauma is over.
Yeah, totally true. So our audience is probably wondering who the heck we're talking to. And it is a return guest, Shannah Game. She isn't your typical money expert. She's a certified financial planner and a certified trauma of money specialist behind the award-winning podcast, Everyone's Talking Money. I love that podcast, Shannah. With over 28 million downloads. She's been around for a while, and she's got a lot of listeners because it's such good stuff. So she is known for her no BS, relatable advice, and Shannah has spent 20 plus years helping people unravel their messy money stories, crushing limiting beliefs, and build unapologetic wealth. All that without giving up the things that make life worth living. Shannah first joined us on episode 57 titled Crash, Money Trauma and Recovery. We'll drop that in the show notes. So her book, Unraveling Your Relationship with Money, is the ultimate guide to breaking free from financial shame, ditching the hustle for less mindset, and creating a life that's bold, abundant, and authentically yours. I'm so glad you gave us an advance copy. It was awesome. So Shannah, welcome back to the show.
Thanks so much for having me. I love this show. I love everything that you both are doing, and I'm so thrilled to be here.
Well, what's interesting is when I read your book, Catching Up to Five made an appearance. We were one of your favorite podcasts, along with, I think, Choose FI and a few others. And I was like, oh, my God, we actually exist and are in other people's material. We're in Jackie's material. We're popping up everywhere.
And you're going to be in there for, as many copies of this book that sells, or however long you have the podcast, whichever. But yeah, I really wanted to highlight people that I think do great work in this area of personal finance. And you both are really helping people who have felt lost in this journey. And so you're in great company.
Well, you were lost too. And one thing that's interesting that you talked about in your book and sort of was a nidus for your entire financial journey was that you are a financial advisor that could not look at your own ATM receipts. It was a major trauma for you. How can that happen? Tell us. And this is sort of the nidus of your book in dealing with money as emotion. And an ATM receipt emoted a lot of things in you. Tell us about that.
Well, I'm a classically trained money expert, and I learned very early on. I was working with my father when I first started in this industry, and we were working with people who had $100 million in assets and these huge estates, down to some of my friends that were just starting out. And I started to realize that everyone shared the same sort of hangups around money. They were all stuck somewhere in the same place. And that actually didn't have anything to do with numbers. And that was kind of my first aha. But when I started to really have this transformation or unraveling my own relationship with money, I could not look at ATM receipts. I would fold them in origami shape, shove them in my wallet, and then I just would never look at them. And there was a moment when I thought, okay, this is ridiculous. But what I recognize is that growing your wealth and money, and it's not just about math. It's not just about the numbers. If it was, we would all have this thing figured out. That it's really about the emotions, about the story, the beliefs that you picked up from childhood, about all this gunk that gets in the way of you being able to use those numbers, right, in the best way. And so for me, when I would look at an ATM receipt, what would happen in my head is I would start subtracting every bill that I knew I had to pay. And before, I would say even in a second, I would have told myself that I'm broke, that I can't pay my mortgage, that I'm going to get my house repossessed, that I'm going to live on the street. Like, my brain would do these crazy things around numbers. And I started to think, okay, this is ridiculous. Like, I'm a trained money expert and this happens to me. Imagine what happens to other people. And then I would go and work with people and see it played out in real life. And that sort of was the metamorphosis of, okay, let me see if I can figure out how to help people change this and ultimately start with myself.
That's interesting because you talk about being stuck, and this is developmentally stuck. I mean, we all grow and develop, but our development can arrest. Our personal development, our personal growth, our emotional development, and our money development can arrest. I arrested probably somewhere around being a teenager and was stuck there until I was 50 years old and woke up to my own money story, my own money traumas. Why do you think we get stuck?
It's a really good question, Bill. And I think that there's so much that comes into play that it's almost so hard to pinpoint something exactly. But I think we grow up with these beliefs around money of what we saw our parents or whoever raised us, what they did or didn't do, what they said or didn't say. And those things become deeply internalized inside of us without us really being aware that that's happening. So when we're moving through life and we're interacting with money, those kind of unconscious norms or beliefs or myths around money, they're sort of playing automatically. Like it's the good angel versus the devil on our shoulder. And they're kind of in this constant war. And I think because also we don't talk about money. We don't talk about the things that maybe we've done wrong or that we're feeling stuck in a particular area, because admitting that would mean that we don't know what we're doing. And I think that's something that a lot of us struggle with. I know that's something I struggled with a lot, is this idea of perfectionism around money. So if you admit, oh, I went over budget, or, oh, I've not saved for retirement yet, that somehow that's a reflection of who you are as a human being versus, no, just numbers. That's just something we haven't planned for yet or taken into account. And so I feel like there are so many layers to the onion to kind of taking that apart to figure out why we get stuck here. But I think ultimately somehow we've attached the amount of money in our bank account with who we are as humans. And for a lot of us, that comes with these like deep emotions and traumas and fears and comparison and all these areas that for each of us, they're different, but they kind of collectively keep us stuck in that place.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's a book, and you may be familiar with this, and we're going to try and have this author on the show, called The 7 Stages of Money Maturity by George Kinder, who is the grandfather or godfather of life planning. And there are stages that we go through in our relationship with money, who in many ways, according to your book, is like a person. It is a relationship. It's like a living, breathing, emoting person and not just a piece of paper. So these stages that we go through, we can get arrested, just like Maslow's pyramid. It's probably a similar kind of analogy there. Jackie, what do you think about this and growing up through stages of money or our relationship with that person money?
I mean, for me, I've thought about this a lot, and part of my program when I was at Kansas State was financial therapy. So I just learned a lot about myself. I think I've come out of a lot of shame and being stuck, and my way of doing it was to be public about a lot of stuff and be transparent. That was my way of doing it. And when I'm talking with people, I always reassure them that they don't have to do that. That might not be their way. So for me, what helped me kind of move through some of that stuff was just openly sharing it, not holding in the shame or the embarrassment or anything like that. So that's kind of my take on it. And I did have a question, Shannah. The certified trauma of money specialist. Can you explain to us what that is? I think we've kind of gathered from a little bit of this discussion already, but tell us about what that is.
It's a relatively new, specialized area in money, but what it really looks at is this idea of trauma, where trauma comes from, and how to become aware or diagnose trauma, if you will, related to money, and then some ways of moving through this trauma. So it's really just an understanding that, deeper understanding, I would say, that money is so emotional and that these areas of a trauma, and that might feel like a big word for a lot of people, but really just think of it as some sort of emotional pain or distress or something that you feel internally in your body when you interact with money. Like whether it's when you're opening your bank app and you start to, like, your heart starts racing, or maybe you forgot to pay a bill one time and your credit score dropped. And every time you go to pay a bill, you just have this feeling of, oh my gosh, this is going to happen to me again. I'm a terrible, horrible person. Or it could be something like, you grew up in poverty, right? And there was a real stress around money. But for a lot of people, it could also be the reverse. It could be actually growing up in a wealthy family. And maybe you feel some emotional pain around an idea of greed, or you feel some separation from that. So it can come from all different directions. So this certification is really just a deeper understanding that there is this thing called trauma around money, and that for a lot of us, we just don't know how to recognize it. But what I like to say is it's really about what we're talking about here in your question, Bill, that you asked. It's these stuck areas. So for me, I like to think about it, we're standing on one side of a bridge and we want to get to the other side of the bridge, right, to reach our money goals, but we just can't seem to get there. So the study of money trauma and the emotional side of money is looking at what is that piece emotionally, right, that's keeping us, ricocheting us back to the side of the bridge that we're on when we really want to get to the other side. So it's a deep kind of understanding and helping people work through what the heck is going on so that we have sort of a free flow. We state a money goal that we want to achieve. We can attach good thoughts and emotions around that, and we can practically move day by day closer to that. That's my goal for people.
Yeah, what's interesting is, and you talk about this in your book, is people may go underground, stick their heads in the sand because of trauma and not want to deal with it. But then when they wake up, the first thing they want to do is take action. And in some ways, that is actually the wrong thing to do. In many ways, that is the wrong thing to do. And what you say in your book is, stop right there, pause, don't just take action to try and fix the problem because you're so scared that you got so much time to make up. Pause and understand your relationship to the problem, to money. Where did this come from? Dig into it. That's where the therapy part comes in. And one of the things that I think you talk about in the book that I found very helpful is you sort of reiterate Brad Klantz's work on money scripts and money stories. And you use some terms that I found very interesting. And we should go through each of these because we have different money scripts and stories, and we may have pieces of each of these, but there's essentially 4. And I'll take us through your names for these. You used the term nightingale, lion, turtle, and wolf. That sounds so alluring. Tell us who these people are. Who's the nightingale? Who's the lion?
I love likening money scripts to animals because I feel like it's a reference we can kind of put our brains around a little bit. And so that was my purpose of transforming them in this way. So the nightingale is somebody who is always nervous around money, just it's simmering like right there. And I explain the nightingale in this book. I talk about a lot of personal stories because I want people to understand that we're all similar. And so I openly share my story and other people's stories. So the nightingale is a lot like my husband, who just grew up in a family where money was always this bone of contention. There was always something around money happening, whether it was, houses being, repossessed or having to move or just all sorts of things. And so anytime something around money comes up, he just feels this sense of unease, right? So that's a nightingale. And the lion is actually what I am, which is completely opposite. Think of the lion as like a go big or go home, right? You're kind of shooting for the fences. You take maybe more risk on when it comes to money. And the lion is not so good always with the little details, where the nightingale might actually be better with those little details, but not so good on taking risks or kind of the big picture. Then we have the turtle, which just as it sounds, right? Turtles are slow and steady. They want to do research. They want to have a plan. They're just going to move in a much slower progress than any of the other money types. But where the turtle gets stuck is they're okay with risk, but they really are just really slow to get there. So the turtle might be somebody that, opens their investment account, but maybe they keep a lot of their money in the, the money market fund because they're just like, oh, I I'm just going to go slow and steady. Maybe take a little piece and invest it, and then a little piece, right? And then we have the wolf, which I actually don't find a whole lot of wolves, but they're the type of people that they want to read all those articles about like how much money should I have saved at, age 40 or age 50. And they set these big goals, but the wolf gets stuck sometimes in overanalyzing of saying, well, okay, if I'm supposed to, have, I don't know, $2 million invested by age 50, I could do it this way or this way or this way or this way or this way. And then they sometimes take inaction, right? So they have these big lofty goals, but sometimes they get a little mixed up. So I love thinking about these types in terms of thinking about like, what are you just kind of innately, what do you resonate more innately, but know that they're just used almost as a launching point, because I think we all need to understand more of our money strengths and then what are our blind spots, and be okay, just like you were saying, Jackie, like talking about things, like talking about like, this is sort of a weakness for me around money. Maybe I need a mentor, or maybe I need to read some books or learn a little bit more about that. But these are the things I do really great. So let me see how I can play into these things I do really great and find something to help me with some of these weaknesses so that I can, marry it together.
So as far as these money stories or money scripts, so if for the people that are familiar with Dr. Brad Klontz, so his 4 was avoidance, status, vigilance, and worship. And you put them in much easier terms, like, the animals. And I kind of like that. And I always felt this even with Dr. Brad Klontz's, but the animals that you mentioned, I feel like I'm a little bit of a mix of each of those. But certainly, those are the type of personality or scripts that exist out there.
I mean, the funny thing about these is I think the Phi community would say that most of them are turtles with a little bit of lion. But the turtle, the slow and steady wins the race, is sort of the Phi community. They're vigilant about money, and if you're born that way, whether you're a turtle or a lion, you're going to get there. For me, I resonate with your husband as a nightingale in a way. I mean, I was in an avoidance mindset for so long, and we migrate between these. We're sort of a casserole of all 4 of these things, if we can use the food analogy in addition to the animal analogy. But I resonate now more with vigilance and a little bit of worship. I've never really resonated with the lion or the status money script. That just has never really been me very much. I've migrated from it. And these are almost like you move through them and there's sort of growing up through them. I think in some ways the turtle is probably the peak or the animal that wins the race of these 4. And it's where we sort of all want to get and have a little bit of the rest of them in our repertoire. What do you think, Shannah?
Yeah, I would agree with you, because if we look at somebody who started investing right when they were in their 20s, and maybe they started investing with a really small amount of money, right? This kind of turtle mentality, right? If we fast forward to 50 or 60 years old, right? They potentially, due to compounding, could have gobs of money in their retirement, right? Where for me, I wish I had more of the turtle mentality when I was in my 20s. For me, I was like, no, I'm going to do these. I was always been an entrepreneur. I'm going to swing for the fences. And sometimes that swinging for the fences means you don't allocate money in certain directions, right? You're kind of waiting for like the big thing or the big hit. But yeah, I think if we could adopt a little bit more of the turtle mentality with the understanding that we also sometimes need to maybe add a little bit of risk in there, right, in order to grow. But that's slow and steady. It does, mathematically at least, it does win.
Hey, Jackie, have you ever wished that you had a financial advisor on speed dial and ready to guide you through every money decision? Someone who could help you optimize your finances, reduce your taxes, and ensure you're always on the right track? Well, with Bolden Financial Planner, that's exactly what you get, right at your fingertips.
Bolden isn't just another financial tool. From creating a detailed retirement plan to exploring Roth conversions, Bolden provides expert-level insights tailored specifically to your situation. It's designed to help you make smarter choices without the hefty price tag of traditional financial advice.
Yeah, Bolden goes beyond just crunching the numbers. It acts as your partner in planning. It helps you navigate critical decisions like how to pay down debt, how to structure your retirement withdrawals, and how to manage your investments efficiently. With its powerful what-if scenario planning, Bolden lets you test different strategies and see the impact of your choices before you make them.
And you know what the best part is, Bill? Bolden is always there for you. As life changes, whether it's a job, a big purchase, or unexpected expenses, your Bolden plan can adjust in real time, ensuring that you stay on track no matter what.
Yeah, this tool is fantastic. It takes an investment of your time, but it pays dividends. With Bolden, you don't just get a financial plan, you get a decision-making partner and control over your financial future. Start playing smarter today at gobolden.com/catching up. That's go.bolden, BOLDIN.com/catching up.
Yeah, it sounds like it's kind of like these phases, like that nightingale you're talking about. Early on, a lot of us might not think about our money and just not want to talk about it or whatever. And then we kind of move through each of these phases. And there would be a good thing, like Bill was saying, at moments in his life, he was a certain one, and now he's more different, more like the turtle. I think most of the 5 people are kind of like the turtle, where they know you're not going to get rich overnight. It's going to take time, but you will win the race if you follow either the J.O. Collins or some of these things that are out there. Just put things in a very nice context.
Yeah, I agree. It seems like our late starters may start as a nightingale, and then they move towards a turtle, and then maybe they take on a little bit of the lion. But in some ways, you really don't want to end up being a wolf. And this is the one that I had the hardest time understanding, this money worship wolf. And why do you say you don't see that many wolves out there?
I think that there are plenty of wolves, but I think more of us tend to oscillate between nightingale, lion, and turtle, somewhere in that neck of the woods. I think there's always some degree of, and I don't want to use the word worship, I mean, because to a lot of people that sounds really negative, but for a lot of us there could be an element of that. But I see people primarily being anxious around money, really slow and steady, not wanting to take on a lot of risk, or the person that's just trying to take on all the risk, is really the 3 that I tend to see most people oscillate between. And I don't really know why that is. I just, from interacting with people and their money, that's typically what I see.
Okay, well, there's a lot of other animals out in the world too. It is a Noah's Ark, many swift and many, but these aren't just the only 4, but these are the common threads that both you and Dr. Brad Klontz see in all of our stories. And we would do well to read their research. I think Brad Klontz has great books out there on this, because you, as we started with, you shouldn't just take action. You should figure out your money trauma. You should figure out your money scripts before you take action. And you talk about unwinding your money beliefs and where did they come from. And one of the things you use to get out of the animal analogy is the money pie. You move on into food and talk about a money pie with regards to this. And this is really rooted in cognitive behavioral therapy, which people may not understand. So if you could take us through what cognitive behavioral therapy is and how you use the money pie to help understand these money scripts.
Yeah, as you can tell, I love good analogies, right? So I love food, I love animals, so I'm always bringing them into my work. Cognitive behavioral therapy is just a modality of therapy that really looks at your thoughts being the primarily indicator, right, of the different actions that you take in life. And so really starting to unwind, what are your thoughts? Where do they come from? Are they positive? Are they negative? What are they telling you? I don't remember the number, but it's something crazy like we have, is it 70,000 thoughts per day, or it's something, it may be more than that. Bill, you're the doctor, you might know better than me, but
it's in your book, read the book.
Yeah, it's an insane amount of thoughts every day. So the money pie takes this modality of behavioral therapy and looks at what is the motivators behind us taking action, right? And specifically around money. So for me, there's a bit of a hierarchy here. If we look at our thoughts, like what are we thinking around money? Those influence our feelings. So if our thoughts are, I'm bad with money, or I haven't saved enough, or I'm never going to be able to retire, or whatever that might be, right? That might create a feeling of shame, of judgment, of fear. Fill in the blank with whatever word feels like a good feeling for you or most accurate. And then that influences your actions. So if you're feeling shame, fear, judgment around money, usually you're not going to take the actions that you need to change that. So then those actions influence patterns and behaviors, right? So we're looking at this idea of like, how do we get across this bridge to the place that we want to get to? That really involves patterns and behaviors around money, which also includes your thoughts, right? So if you're thinking, all right, it's not too late for me. I can save for retirement. I can do it. I can start today. I'm worthy of this. I can make this happen. I don't have to be stuck in shame. Maybe your first action around that healthy thought is, let me see if I can put $100 a week in my retirement plan, whatever it might be, right? It could be just raising your 401k percentage. It could be absolutely anything. With that action, you're going to start going, okay, let me create a behavior around it. Let me make this the norm, right? That starts to then change your thoughts and feelings around money. So it starts to become this cyclical action. I think of it like a pie, like we're stacking up ingredients, right? And we want to create a delicious pie. We've got to have the foundation, which is our thoughts. And then we kind of build it up, right? So it's super yummy and tasty. So this starts with the idea of what you're thinking about money. And most of us are programmed to think negatively about our situation around money. And that influences this whole kind of cascade that ultimately creates change.
Yeah, I mean, you added the patterns and behaviors to this. This is really great because it goes back to, is it Cal Newport's Atomic Habits or something like that? I think he's the one that wrote that. But thoughts become behaviors, behaviors become actions, actions create patterns, and patterns become ingrained behavior. This is really unwinding that neuroplasticity that we have. And this has to do with, why don't I exercise every day? How do I start unwinding this? Okay, I need to go for a walk before I can run, before I can do the next thing. But it's really hard to unwind these things and get back to the beginning of the money pie. One of the ways I think you used to illustrate this money pie in the book was you have a dear friend, Cassandra, and she came to you one day at lunch with sort of a money dilemma. I think she was thinking about quitting her job. And you took her through this on the backside of a napkin. Can you tell us a little bit about her story and in order to illustrate this concept of the money pie?
Yeah, it's been a while since I've read my book, so let me do my best to paraphrase her story. But yeah, she came to me and she said, you know, I really want to quit my job. There's something else that I want to do in life, but I'm terrorized because I've been brought up in a family where you don't quit your job. Like, you just don't do it. It doesn't matter whether you hate it or not. You just don't do that, right? And she had kind of a backstory. She had parents that would say things to her like, you make a really good income. Like, a lot of people don't do that. Why in the world would you give that up? And she could not let this idea go of, she really felt it was time to leave this job and she was being called to something else. So on the napkin, I just worked through this money pie with her and I went, okay, let's look at your thoughts around this. What is influencing your quitting your job or not quitting your job, right? What are those feelings and those actions, pattern behaviors around this? Can we rework this in a way? And what she moved through is she realized that a lot of the thoughts and feelings around this were not hers, right? They were her parents, they were her siblings, they were borrowed from other people. And when we got down to, you know, I kept diving down, but what are yours? What are yours? Let's look at yours. Let's figure out yours. And we got to the place where her thoughts around money were that she really felt money was abundant everywhere. And that if she was following her skills and what she was good at and what she was feeling called to, that she wouldn't have to worry about letting go of that paycheck because a new paycheck would come in. And that created a feeling of strength for her, of availability to try something else. And so she ended up leaving her job and starting her new career. And she's now like abundantly, like far more successful than she was previously in her W-2 corporate job. But it really took a process for her to separate out what were her actual feelings and thoughts about this and what was the things that were programmed into her so that she could find a place to feel good about making a decision for herself. And I think that's a really important process that a lot of people get stuck is our thinking, our thoughts and feelings actually don't belong to us. They belong to somebody else. And so it's really creating like our own dictionary of thoughts and feelings around money and life and values and circumstances that ultimately help us make better actions, which create the patterns and behaviors that support that.
Yeah, Cassandra's story totally resonated with me. And that is why the work you do is so important, to separate the influences that were in her life and how they were thinking to how she could think independently. And I grew up in poverty, and everybody around me, my dad's been gone for a long time, but I know he would be saying the same thing. And I just remember when I wrote my letter of resignation when I was retiring, I put something in there about, some may say I'm giving away the golden ticket. And I know my dad would have thought like that, but that was thinking from how I grew up. And once I got exposed to other things, my thinking changed and I became more independent and allowed myself to think like Cassandra did. And so, because it took a lot for me to actually retire from my job and give up that good paycheck and the benefits and move on. So the advice I try to give to people, and tell me if this is kind of like part of what you did with Cassandra, is to expose her to different things. Because I notice a lot of people, if they stay in the neighborhood or stay in the same community they grew up in, they never think differently. But if you, let's say you go to college or you go into the military and you're all of a sudden in a different environment, you're seeing different things, and now your mind is starting to open up and say, wow, there's other ways. So it was very inspiring for me to hear you share Cassandra's story, and I felt it, it seemed like it was a lot like mine.
Yeah, and I think, Jackie, what you're saying there is so important, right? I think of it like an expansion, right? It's an expansion of, rather than just kind of stuck in these like hard beliefs that we have, like when we go through this process and we can have expansion, like it allows for space to change our minds, to think about something different, or even just to give yourself a permission slip, just like you did. You've now created like a movement behind this and this show, and you're a part of this. And I think that's so great. Like, we don't know where the road takes us, but allowing ourselves to have that exploration, I think, is so key.
Yeah. And what's interesting is, folks in our audience, remember, we're talking to certified financial planners. And when you're looking for one, the conversations you need to have are these first.
Yes.
It's not the how, the action, the money, because that overlooks all the important stuff to get you to ingrain it into a pattern of behavior. If you just take, what are your goals, dreams? Where do you want to be? Okay, let's build that bridge, as you talk about it, with the numbers and the money to get you there. But if a number is the goal or the dream, then you can build the numbers to do so, but you're overlooking, 80% of the iceberg under the surface, right?
Yeah, and this is what I'm so passionate about this. And it took me a long time to really embrace that this was the space that I was being called to talk about and to really showcase, because I came from a world of the traditional financial planning, right? And I feel it's really sad for me that that is left out of the equation when we're talking about creating somebody's financial plan, because it's so much more than just the numbers. I can hand you a 50-page financial plan with the numbers. In 2 months, you're probably going to call me back and say, this doesn't work, right? And so this doesn't work isn't a function of the numbers. It's a function about all of the things that we're talking about, the patterns, the beliefs, the behaviors, the relationship, the trauma, the shame, all of this stuff that's underneath the hood. And so I feel as a certified financial planner, like my job is to highlight that this needs to be a part of the conversation. I'm never saying that numbers are not important, but numbers have to be paired with the emotions around money or it doesn't work. And there are so many scientific studies around when we state a goal or resolutions, why those don't work. Well, it's because there isn't this powerful why behind it. There isn't this emotion, right, that we deeply mesh and attach to it. And that's really what we're talking about here. And I think it's easy to just brush over this stuff and to say, well, this doesn't matter, right? Give me the plan of how I retire early. Like, give me that plan, right? But that plan needs to also include the emotional piece. That to me is sort of like the secret decoder ring to help that retirement plan really come to life.
Yeah, I mean, the goal isn't a number. The goal is, say, I want to be free. The goal is, I want my time, I want it back. Okay, what number gets us there? It's not, I want $5 million, and that will make me free. Just like Warren Buffett's sidekick, Charlie Munger, invert the question. And we need to invert the question. We kind of ask it. So what's the numbers? If you don't invert it, one over the numbers is the emotion, the goal, the why. The numbers get you to the substance of what we're talking about today. And one of the things that people, Jackie, we threw a question out into our audience in the Facebook community. One of the things you talk about is money secrets. And these are part of our shame and what we hide from the world. And if we come out into the world with our secrets, not only do we help ourselves because we've processed that material, we're no longer hiding it from ourselves and from everybody else, we're helping infinite numbers of others, which is why when I was reading your book, Shannah, I put a post out in the community and said, okay, everybody, we all have money secrets. Here's mine. Here's a big one of mine. I have many. Tell me yours. And a few of our audience members, community members, gave us theirs. And I think you would say, we'll see what you think. Fairly typical. Jackie, take us through a money secret.
My money secret or somebody from the community, hopefully?
I love that.
I can start. I came out of residency with $30,000 of credit card debt because I deserved all these vacations from my life of servitude in the hospital. And, I didn't tell my wife about it before we got married. So that was a secret, right? And you want to go into a big partnership like that, having opened up the book, so to speak. Jackie, what's the secret you might have?
Well, so Karen still stayed with you after that? Shame on you.
Well, she had a glove box full of 100 parking tickets. So we had to process her parking tickets and my credit card debt. You know how parking tickets can compound. It's amazing in Chicago how many pink slips you can collect in a glove box. I'll tell you that.
Oh, God. All right. So like I said earlier, a lot of my story, it was therapeutic for me to just share it and be transparent about it. But some of them I don't talk about that much because I would get the shock and awe. So one of those things was that I took a $50,000 401k loan in 2009. Now, on the surface, again, it's like clench my pearls, like, oh my God, you never do that. And every financial expert there is, right, would say, oh no, you never, ever, ever, ever take a 401k loan. But I did think about it. And my use for that was that it was 2009, so right after the housing bubble. And I was able to buy this condo that they didn't want to loan people money if you were not occupying the property. So I'm like, okay, I think I could pay for this in cash. So I got about a $250,000 condo for about $80,000 in cash. Well, I didn't have all $80,000, so I took a $50,000 401k loan, came up with $30,000 in cash myself, and bought the thing with cash. And I don't regret the decision, but as soon as I mention it, I always get this look. It's like, well, how can you be a financial expert and do that? And by the time I tell the story, people kind of understand it, but that's something I haven't talked much about. And I don't keep it a secret on purpose, but I don't talk about it that much unless I can put some context around it like I just did.
Well, Jackie, it may sound like or feel like a secret to you in your money scripts, but actually that sounds like a well thought out financial decision to buy an asset. A lot of people take 401k loans to pay off debt.
Correct. And that's usually the assumption. And I guess that's why I'm slow to talk about it, because people's assumption, it almost always is, were you broke? You're using it to pay off credit card debt. It's always something negative attached to it. So thank you, partner. I appreciate, that's why we're good partners.
Take a big breath. You feel better. It's out there in the
yeah, woo, you can
That's
breathe
my
now.
confession. That's my confession.
So you got to do the same thing for us, though, too. It's only fair, as a money trauma expert, that maybe you share one secret, and then we'll share a few from our audience.
Ooh, I've got so many. I talk about a lot in my book, but here's probably, I owed a decent amount on a tax bill that I knew was going to happen. So I had learned about this special kind of tax deduction if you bought an SUV. So I went out, bought a super expensive SUV, got the big tax deduction, didn't owe a tax bill, but then had a massive payment every month. On my SUV, and then proceeded to get divorced about 2 months after and had to pay the entire SUV payment myself. But at this point, I had to give up almost all my assets in the divorce. So I had very little money to actually make that payment. So it was a whole cascade of decisions. Not really sure which one was bad or good or whatever, but it was definitely a time period where I was left with a very expensive car payment that I had no right to have that type of car payment.
Yeah, it sounds like you let the tail wag the dog a little bit there.
1000%.
And there was a lot of unintended consequences from that decision that you didn't, you got to play the end game. You got to reverse engineer it to what's this natural conclusion, but you had no way of knowing that maybe your marriage would blow up and that you'd fill all your possessions into this very expensive car payment car and leave everything else behind. And this is not a story that is unfamiliar to our audience. We hear about these same kinds of stories, traumas and decisions in the community. And I want to tell a few of them too here, because they were so kind to share them with us in our Facebook community. YS Wang says, I live below my means, but all my excess money stayed in my checking account for more than 10 years. That's kind of who was the one you referred to in your animals that sort of stuck their head in their sand?
Was it the nightingale?
Was that a nightingale, or was that?
It's a little bit of a nightingale. It might be a little bit of a turtle. It just depends on how you interpret it. But I actually hear that a lot. I have actually worked with a lot of women who have done that, who have been very successful and actually had millions of dollars just sitting in a checking account out of complete fear.
That's right. You told a story about that in your book. Mm-hmm. So that somebody did it to a much bigger tune, and yeah, they had all the money in the world to live their lives, but they weren't letting it grow. How did they overcome that fear? And did they admit that that was a mistake?
They did. I think it was, for them, the advice that they had gotten from external financial experts was just felt too out of line with who they were, but they didn't really know how to pinpoint what their values were and what they wanted their life to look like. So we literally sat down in almost like a therapy session and got out a big piece of paper. I do this often with people, and some markers and crayons, and said, okay, let's draw what we want life to look like. What are the words? Where are we living? What are we doing? And then we created basically her kind of map of her life, of her values. And then I said, okay, so let's start sending that money to these places. And so that was like a visual, practical example that she could see, like, oh, I can create the world I want to live in, and I don't have to be afraid of sending the money in those directions. So it was kind of a tearing down of some of those beliefs, and really it was just rooted in immense fear of making the wrong decision, and that the wrong decision would mean she's a failure. Like, she's been so great building her business. But if she made the wrong choice with money, it would just, take away all of that success.
So you obviously do a great job of combining your CFP with a lot of this trauma and psychology stuff. So just for our audience, for someone that might be specifically looking for someone that has similar skills to you as a financial professional, is there like a certain credential? I mean, I know you have your credential, or how do they find someone that has this psychological side and have that sort of infused in their practice as a financial professional?
It's tricky is what I'm going to say. A lot of times you will find either or. So you'll find, a money therapist, right, who is adept at dealing with the emotional side of money, or you'll find a traditional CFP money expert that is the numbers person. So it's really, I find, rare to find somebody who matches both of those and can do it in a real sort of seamless way. I would tell people, look, if that's what you're looking for, you can go on cfp.net. You can find out, CFPs in your area. There are lots of other resources out there. Interview people, right? Don't just hire somebody. Interview people. Interview as many people as you need until you find someone that you feel really matches up with the language, the vocabulary, the approach, the skills that you are going to need to help you get unstuck. And I think sometimes when we get around money, we kind of freak out and we feel like, oh my gosh, how dare I interview somebody and ask them questions, right? But you're paying them money. Ask them all of the questions. Ask them if they help you do this. Ask them about their credentials. Ask them about their process. All of that, I think, is super important to finding somebody who, can be a really good fit for you.
Yeah, and I'm thinking these days, with technology, a lot of these financial professionals, they have a podcast or they're on podcasts or they're blogging, or they, there might be some material or something out there that gives you a sense of who this person is. But I can say, as a recent CFP certificate, I got my CFP in 2022, they have incorporated psychology of financial planning as one of the domains for the exam, but I can tell you it's not what it needs to be. They basically go over some cognitive biases, and that's about it. Hopefully, as time goes on, that will get better and better. But I know when I was getting my certification, I was thinking in terms of this psychological part is so important. I can't even really do what I do, and I mostly do education, but even with that, I wanted to have the psychological side of it because that was so powerful. It happened to me and a lot of other people where it wasn't just the money part. The money part is very, very helpful, and like you said, the right mix, the right merging is to have a little bit of both, because when I'm talking about goals and how you feel, it's kind of cool to throw in some things that might be helpful. Like you said, you deal with women a lot, and I do as well. But like, you'll have someone, maybe they got divorced and they were married for 20 years and they're like, I don't have any retirement at all. And then I'll say, now, that you have benefits being married more than 10 years, you could get Social Security benefits on behalf of your ex-spouse. And, so that only that together does it really help out. So do a little digging. Typically people that are talking about this stuff like you and use that approach, there's something out there to help you do that. And hopefully getting the credential, the CFP credential, will start to incorporate a lot more of the stuff that you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, this is critical because CFP is the foundation, right? And then the flat fee, advice only project management type planner is important, but that's the numbers. The soft side is when they're going to get these additional credentials like you have, Jackie, like you have, Shannah, or I would say look for a certified life planner. Look for somebody that's gone so far as to say, George Kinder, this is important. I've got my financial foundation, but I need to, they get out there, they hang up their shingle and they realize, oh my God, I've got to talk to people. I can't just run their numbers. I've got to work with their dreams and their goals. So how do I become a financial therapist in my own way? What credentials might I seek out to do so? So there are other additional credentials that will tell you this person is interested in who I am and who I want to be, not just the number that I need to get to, as we've been talking about before.
Yeah, and that can make all the difference.
So there's some other secrets out there, which we'll maybe have to put in the show notes because there's just so many. Or I'll refer you back to the post we have in our community where there's like 50 comments of posts.
I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you haven't joined our community, we do have a very active Facebook group, almost 17,000 people, and there's a lot going on in there. So come on over. It's just catching up to 5. And so, Bill, why don't we could take a couple, can't we? Because we had some good ones. What about Anonymous?
Okay, we'll go a little bit over today because I want to get to a couple of manifestos as well.
Okay, so just one more and then we can get to the manifesto. Okay,
well,
so
let's do Robbins because Robbins is a CPA and people who work with numbers don't get this right either. You know, it's not just you can have your MBA and totally screw this up. You can be a CEO and totally screw this up. Robbins says, in my early earning years, I took a quote investment advice from my bank and ended up owning way too many expensive bank-sponsored mutual funds. Hey, I did this, and it's not advice. They're selling you their products. And then I never reviewed these investments or reconsidered for 25 years. Wow. The thing here is that we make these decisions, and once we've made them, we feel this overwhelming sense of relief. Okay, I've made a decision. And then you have you end up having sunk costs because you say, oh no, I've done this, I've done it wrong, but I'm just going to have to see it through. And you don't acknowledge the loss of like, okay, I need to get out of this. I've dug myself a hole. Let's build a ladder out of the hole. And then she said also in my 20s, she leased a brand new car because the dealership convinced me it was a better deal than financing a purchase. It wasn't. And then she comes clean and says, I'm a CPA. And for
that was a good one.
It took her 25 years to recover from, and this is what happened to us. We made the absence of a decision is still a decision. And we made the absence of a decision not to really deal with our money and to live paycheck to paycheck. And we woke up 20 years later realizing that we had saved last. We made the decision passively to save last and spend first. And we needed to invert the equation, just like Charlie Munger. So there's so many secrets out there that we need to share so that other people, and universally, these folks all said, I don't want somebody else to make the same mistake. Let's swing towards the fences here and towards maybe the end of the show by taking you up, lifting you up, because that's why we're here. And Shannah, you quote 2 manifestos in the book, which I absolutely loved. One was from Apple, and then the other is your manifesto that you supposedly somewhere near your desk have hanging on the wall. Jackie, maybe you could help us by reading Apple's manifesto first, and then Shannah can talk to us about why she modified something like this into her own personal money manifesto, because she encourages you to write your thoughts down about your relationship with money.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's check out Apple's influential manifesto. So here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They are not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them. But the only thing you can't do is ignore them, because they change things. They push the human race forward. And while some might see them as crazy ones, we see genius, because the people who think they are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do.
Isn't that fantastic, Shannah? I mean, I'm so glad you in the book, because this describes the FI community. This describes the FI culture, right?
I love that manifesto. I don't care how you think about them as a company. There's something about that for me. I'm an emotional person. That just hits me right deep in the core, because I feel like I am a square peg. Like, I don't fit anywhere. And I struggled with that so much in my life. But, you know, now that I'm in my 40s, like, I embrace being different. And I love that. And yeah, I took this concept of, you know, businesses have these manifestos. They have these credos of how they want to interact and what they want their customers to feel and all of this. Why don't we create our own manifesto around money? And you can interpret this in any way that you want to interpret it. And I actually am in the process of, I have gotten rid of my old one, and I'm in the process of rewriting mine, because through writing this book and this whole process with me, I've really evolved and changed. And so right now, my new manifesto is just kind of a couple of bullet points, but really where I am right now is that my manifesto is about me and other humans are above money, that money is not above us, and that I can use my money to powerfully change this world, and that having more money is a source of that. And that is not something that makes me bad. That is something that makes me good, proactive, and helpful for my community, my family, and myself. And I also choose, this is language I deliberately have in my manifesto, is I choose to have a healthy relationship with money, and I choose to have empowering thoughts around money every day. So that's just something that's personal to me, but you know, you can create your own. It can be a sentence, it could be a word, it could be a picture, but something that really showcases what you believe and want your relationship around money to be. And then the second piece of it is put it somewhere that you see it. It's like a twist on a vision board, if you will, right? Put it somewhere that you can see it, by your computer, on your phone or something, and just remind yourself about this idea of relationship with money and how you want to live it out every day.
Well, Bill, we got to write our own manifesto then.
We need the late because we have Fritz Gilbert with the retirement manifesto.
Yeah.
Maybe we need to have the late starter or the catching up with time manifesto. That would be a good one, Jackie. That's food for thought. A little project there. We should work on that.
Yeah, we need to put that on the project list for sure.
Well, maybe we can crowdsource this and ask our community to chime in the Facebook community with what should be on the late starter manifesto. I think I'll go write a post today and see what.
Yeah. Look at all the great ideas coming out of this podcast. Shannah, you're just really motivating us and inspiring us to kind of take some of these ideas from the book. Well, we loved it so much that now we are really thinking about, okay, how can we extend this? How can we actually do something that's going to make us better with the financial part, not just the math?
Well, I want to know, too, now that we've processed so many feelings and emotions, behaviors, and patterns around money today in our show, Shannah, how are you doing with your ATM receipt problem?
You know, it's a journey, let me tell you, Bill. I'm good. I no longer create origami. I actually do look. And for me, I set up these time blocks. This is the process that worked for me, is I set a timer on my phone, 5 minutes. 5 minutes, I look at my money. I do whatever I need to. I have whatever thoughts I need to. Once that 5 minutes is up, I walk away. So for me, I create a structure that works with my own emotions and my own goals and helps me just have complete balance around money. So nowadays, origami is only being created out of scrap pieces of paper.
Yay.
And we're here to inspire our audience. And one of the things I found in your book, too, and we're not going to end on a money note here, we're going to end on a personal triumph note. And I hope I'm not overstepping my bounds here, but you are very transparent about it in the book. I noticed that during this podcast, you have one headphone in or one earphone in. You had a major personal health trauma that you overcame, and I'm sure in some way that hitting you in the face and overcoming it has a lot to do with overcoming any trauma, let alone money trauma in your life. Can you give us a little bit about that story?
Yeah, a little over 6 years ago in 2018, I had an accident, became deaf in my left ear, and I have chronic tinnitus, depends how you pronounce it. And for those of you who don't know, think about turning up the loudest static on TV. And that is what's playing out in my left ear 24/7. So it's this weird thing of not being able to hear externally, but of being able to hear a lot internally. And that really was a turning point in kind of everything for me, because I realized that I now have this disability, if you will. I can't do life the same way. I can't stress out about things the same way. I need to really change some things. And part of that was really my relationship with money and the influence that I let it have on my life. And I really had to take some time to create my own kind of tools in the toolkit. A lot of them I share them in the book, of exercises, of things to try, of journaling prompts, all sorts of different things to help me get rid of some of the gunk so that I could just function as somebody who lives with a kind of chronic trauma every single day.
Yeah, and then I just find it so inspiring because everybody has, we went through a health trauma last year and we overcame it. We're going through yet another car trauma this year now, too. Just found out that my wife's car is toast and we have to, for the fourth time in 5 years, buy another used new car to us. And I'm like, all this car money, I could probably retire. And so the traumas never cease. It's how we face them, embrace them, and overcome them that help us grow as people. Okay, Shannah, final question. We're coming to the end of the show, and hopefully not to the end of our lives, but you talked to a client who was getting close to the end of their life. They were your oldest client ever, and you asked them a very prescient question and maybe got a surprise answer. Can you tell us what you asked them and what their answer was?
Yeah, I was super curious. I am really of people that are older, that are, facing death, that know that that's coming soon, about money and the role that it played in their life. And this person told me that they had focused way too much on money in their life and really wished that they had focused more on time, on the things that they loved to do in life. And, we started to talk about values, and it's a conversation that I hold really close to me, and I think about it often because they felt like they had built these businesses and they had amassed all this wealth, and at the end of the day, they were looking at death, and the amount of money they had couldn't change any of that. And they wished that they had done certain things in life that they didn't do, and now they can't do them. So it really made this big impression on me that it can't just be about money. It can't be. And when we make it just about money, we miss out on so much. And that time is really the resource that is scarce. And there's always more money. Well,
I agree wholeheartedly. For me, it's about the people, spending time with a person like yourself today. It's been awesome. I will have done this, and it's worth all the money in the world to have spent time with you today and talk about your book today that is called The Unraveling Your Relationship with Money. It's the ultimate guide to breaking free from financial shame, ditching the hustle for less mindset, and creating a life that's bold, abundant, and as we've talked about today, authentically yours. Shannah, it's been great talking with you today. Thank you for sharing your book with me. Thank you for sharing your message with our audience. Jackie, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I loved Unraveling Your Relationship with Money, and I think our audience will love it too. So tell us the official launch date for the book and how they can find you.
The book comes out on February 19th, and you can find the book absolutely everywhere books are sold, or you can go to my website, everyone'stalkinmoney.com/book. I have some amazing bonuses there if you purchase through that link, and you can check out my podcast, Everyone's Talking Money, literally everywhere podcasts are found.
Yeah, and we love the podcast. So we know that you're going to listen to the podcast, get the book, and whatever your financial expert is not doing, this is going to incorporate a lot of that emotional side. So thank you for putting that out there. It means so much. And to me, for a complete picture of your whole financial life, you have to explore that psychological side. And you've done a great job of that.
Yeah, getting to know
Thanks.
your money is all about getting to know yourself, and you can't know your money without knowing yourself. Wow, you can't know your money without knowing yourself. Sounds like a title of a book there somewhere.
It does.
I think it does.
Look at all this geniusness you're pulling out of us, Shannah.
All right, well, we're running out of time today. I can hear the signal fading. We're going to have to move on, let Shannah move on, but we'll be talking to you next week on Catching Up to 5.
So, Bill, as you know, we cannot do this show without our amazing staff and the people that help us put this on. Our social media maven is Diana Falk, and our editor is Fritz Brizard. We love them, and they keep us going.
Yeah, Jackie, I mean, this show wouldn't have the quality it has without our folks, our peeps. And we'd also like to give you a few calls to action for the show. We love our community, and we hope you love us back. If you would like to support the show and our mission to help late starters, you can do that at Buy Me a Coffee, which is a platform that allows you to make a donation. The link is in the show notes and on the website.
Check out the show notes for resources mentioned in today's show. Also, head on over to our website at catchinguptofy.com and check out our vetted resources, partners, and affiliates for discounts and their services, because we love sharing great deals.
Please share the show with others and head on over to our Facebook community to help us grow. If you prefer video, head on over to YouTube and watch the show there. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Catching Up to 5. We would appreciate it if you could also leave us a 5-star review to help our message reach others.
And while we are financial educators that love to teach, remember that our content is for general education and information purposes only. We are not providing financial, legal, or tax advice. Always do your own research or consult a professional before making important decisions.
So, Jackie, we'll see our audience next time on Catching Up to 5. Cheers.